this video, I'm going to ask the question, what is the basis for the president's authority? And I'm going to talk briefly about three different models. The first is this notion of the divine right of kings, or kind of inherited authority, the traditional authority model. The second is the populist charismatic authority model, and the third is the rational legal authority model. A famous sociologist named Max Weber actually came up with all of these models long time ago, and they really do help us to understand kind of why we follow a leader and what some of the pros and cons of the different models of leadership are. I thought about this because on October 4th, 2019, President Trump tweeted the following: "As president, I have an obligation to end corruption, even if that means requesting the help of a foreign country or countries. It is done all the time. This has nothing to do with politics or a political campaign against the Bidens. This does have to do with their corruption." So in this tweet, he's talking about what he has an obligation to do. He's talking about his authority and the basis for his authority. So let's talk a little bit about this. In the Model 1, we talk about Trump as a modern-day Cyrus, and this really uses kind of traditional authority models. Here we're kind of, this is something you may hear some evangelical Christians say. They say, well, God kind of put Trump in this place at this time. He himself may not be the world's best Christian, but his job is to kind of serve as kind of a conduit so that God can kind of make things happen in the world through him. Things like rolling back abortion laws and kind of bringing America back to its Christian roots. Well, what in the world would be wrong with having a leader whose authority comes directly from God itself? Well, there's a couple of problems. So this is kind of how we used to talk about sort of leaders during kind of the Middle Ages, the notion of papal infallibility. But we talked about most of the people who sat on the thrones as monarchs in Western Europe. And all of them said, well, you know, I'm ruling because I've inherited this position, I've been placed in this position, and I'm kind of the earthly representative of God. But the problem is there's not a lot of restraint on your authority if you're representing God. You can, there's a tendency to become an autocrat. There's a tendency to say, well, I can do whatever I want, and none of you are the authority, sort of placed here by God, so you don't really have a lot of ability to kind of push back against what I am doing. So people often talk about traditional authority as kind of an immature model. As you have a more mature democracy, you're supposed to be moving towards rational legal authority. But you can see some of these tweets beginning in September 2019 by our current president, where he says no one else has the authority to impeach me. And you see this by some of his followers as well. They say nobody else was chosen. He was the only one who was chosen. And so it tends to create a system where all the authority then rests in one person, which is not traditionally how we think about it in America with our three branches of government. And these types of authority models, they can be unstable over time. If, you know, God forbid, our president died in office or was assassinated or something like that, there wouldn't be a clear chain of authority in terms of who would then inherit if we're talking about kind of divine right of kings and having been placed on the throne. So that's one way of thinking about kind of his authority and where it comes from. The second one is populism. This idea that he has a direct connection with people. They feel very close to him. Having a Trump-themed wedding, naming your child after Donald Trump, buying a Trumpy bear, all of those are ways of kind of creating a very personal connection with your leader. And we see this because social media makes it possible, right? To feel like you know somebody, to follow Pete Buttigieg's, I guess his husband's website, and he says, you know, take a quiz and see which one of our dogs you like the most. It's very much a personal sort of relationship where you're not so much following the position, you're following the individual. And the problem with charismatic authority is it sometimes leads to things like like a cult of personality, like it did in the former Soviet Union, where people read children's books about Father Lenin or Father Stalin. It's divisive. People sometimes feel like they have to either love their leader or their family, but they can't do both. It's often used to kind of convey a very simplistic message, something like nationalism. And it's dangerous if people turn over their own decision-making authority to that leader and say, well, I'm going to do anything because kind of my buddy, my friend here, he told me to do it. When we think about charismatic authority, we might think about somebody like Jackie Kennedy and talking about Camelot, the idea that people wanted to be married in a dress that looked like Jackie Kennedy. That's very much a personalistic, charismatic relationship. Then finally, we have this notion of rational legal authority. You have the right to rule due to a social contract. You promise your people who vote for you something, and then they have the ability to get rid of you if you don't provide it. And the idea that the social contract was destroyed was basically our justification for the American Revolution. We were supposed to be having representation. We had taxation without representation, so therefore it was appropriate to rebel. The idea here is your authority comes from your office. The ambassador is an emissary set by the state. He speaks on behalf of the state. And so a lot of people would say that was why it was wrong then for President Trump to remove the U.S. ambassador to the Ukraine. The problem with rational authority is it can take longer to do things. And the question we really want to ask is, with all the social media today, are we moving away from kind of rational legal authority? And are we moving really towards charismatic authority? Is that just inevitable given things like videos and tweets? So kind of in conclusion, I know I'm running over here, populism, often charismatic authority is direct authority. People can connect quickly with their leader, and it can lead to a rapid mobilization. It's hard to get control once it starts. And people will sometimes do kind of stupid things on the basis of charismatic authority, like destroying their coffee maker because they think that Keurig is giving to liberals or something like that. It can lead to kind of hysterical sort of group activity. And when we look at things like Trump rallies, we're sometimes looking at this charismatic authority. And so we can see sort of with Trump all of those types of authorities being exercised. Divine right authority, right? I'm the person that God has placed here at this time. Charismatic authority, kind of, I'm your friend, you can trust me. And then rational legal authority is really, I think, partly what the impeachment trial is about, sort of the notion of the president being simply one person among the three branches of government. So thanks for listening. Sorry this went over a bit. Thank you.